This is the Royal Enfield Continental GT. It's a 650cc twin cylinder retro cafe racer. Royal Enfield were part of the original cafe racing scene in the 1960s. Even my old dad, he used to sort of ride bikes around in those days with a fag in his mouth and no helmet on, and it was a kind of a race between one cafe to the next, and a few guys would go out on their bikes and make a day of it. And this bike harks back to that era. You can buy this bike in the UK for £5,899, depending on what colour you get. This particular colour is £6,099, and there's another sort of a shiny chrome looking finish for £6,399. And whatever bike you choose, it's a jolly good price in the UK. As with all our reviews, if you haven't seen our channel before, we put ourselves in the shoes of the 99% of people that would buy the bike we're looking at. And this bike is very much going to appeal to people of my age, older guys who remember the sort of 60s and want a retro bike. And it also would appeal to younger guys who want to do the cafe racer kind of thing now. It'd be a great bike to commute on. It's great on the motorway. Its speed, it's very stable, very easy, so I'd be happy to ride 100 miles an hour on the motorway on it. It's great in the country lanes, it's great in the bends. It really does everything, and I'm actually very impressed with this motorbike. As I said before, it's a 650cc air-cooled twin-cylinder engine. It's got an oil cooler up the front here, but you've got all the modern necessities like fuel injection, electronic ignition, disc brakes front and rear. So you've got the reliability with the retro looks, which is a marvellous combination. You've got a twin cradle tubular steel frame, 55 inches of wheelbase, which is quite short, which gives it its agility. You've got about 7 inches of ground clearance, and you've got a seat height of 31 inches. So I would say this bike is ideally sized for anyone between 5'8" and 6 feet. I'm 6'3", and I probably look large on it, although it feels quite roomy, in fact quite spacious. But I would imagine people would say I look a bit big for it, but it feels fine. Forks have got a 24-degree rake and a 105mm trail, which gives you some very responsive steering. Forks are 41mm in diameter, and you've got 4¼ inches of travel, which is quite okay for a road bike. At the rear, it's a twin shock. You've got 5 levels of adjustment, piggyback reservoirs, and you've got about 3½ inches of travel at the rear. It's got a 12-litre petrol tank, and when you're pushing this bike about, it feels really, really light. It's ever so easy to manoeuvre. You can push and shunt it around and turn it around extremely easily. So I thought this must be quite a light bike. But when I looked at the figures, it's 198 kilos, and it doesn't feel like that at all. engine produces 47 horsepower at 7,250 RPM, and it produces 52 newton meters of torque at 5,250 RPM, but 80% of that torque begins at 2,500 RPM, so the torque is there from low revs right the way through. The engine has 4 valves per cylinder, and the compression ratio is 9.5 to 1, which means that the engine isn't highly stressed, which will be good for service intervals, but also in the way it rides. It has a 6-speed gearbox. Royal Enfield have got this bike absolutely right. It's fabulous. Straight away you feel at one with the bike. It inspires confidence. So you can open up the throttle, you can take the corners, and you feel at one with the bike straight away. With time, after a few weeks, you'd be carving up the bends and really riding this hard. The handling on this bike is so good. You can really get into it. You can ride round the corners ever so fast. It's a joy to ride. The handlebars are a sort of clip-on handlebar, and there's a pull back on them, but it feels really nice. I'm not used to that kind of handlebar because my daily ride is a Harley Davidson. I'm used to having my hands up here, and I thought at first I'm not going to like this bike, but as soon as you get on it, it feels just right. The power delivery on this bike is ever so good. You've got plenty of acceleration and you've got plenty of torque to get up the hills and overtake, and you can have so much fun on this bike, it's untrue. Got a very good lean angle on this bike, so after a week or two, once you get used to it, you'll be able to take the bends and really carve up the country lanes, and it's a fabulous fun bike to ride. Going back to the 60s, where guys would be on their bikes racing from one cafe to the other, the big thing was to get to a ton, 100 miles an hour. And the point of this bike is that you can get to a ton, and if you do, it's an achievement. You could go out and buy a Fireblade or something and get to 100 miles an hour very easily, but with a bike like this you have to work it, and you've got to choose the right road and the right conditions, and you've got to lay down flat on the tank, which you can do, by the way, quite easily. And when you get to a ton, you'll be proud of yourself, obviously law permitting. Now I love this seat. It gives you enough movement forwards and backwards so that you can get yourself right back, get your chest on the tank and lie down out of the wind. It's a very comfortable seat as well. The styling obviously is incredible. I love the look of this bike. This bike has the Pirelli Phantom Sports Comp tyres, and they suit the bike really well. You've got an 18-inch up front and an 18-inch on the rear, but it's a bit wider at the back as you'd expect. At the side here you've got this little panel which unlocks with a key, and you can flip it up, take it off, and you've got the battery, and you've got a little tool kit here. At the back end you've got the enormous silly British number plate, so if you've got a smaller plate on that, the back end would look lovely. And if this was my bike, I'd change these pipes. I would get some raspy, louder pipes for it, and it would be fantastic. One thing I really like are these analog dials, and so many bikes now have digital displays which are hard to read, and you just can't beat the old analog dials. It's nice to see that these days more ladies are riding, and I think this bike would be very suitable for lady riders because the seat isn't too high. It's very easy to push around, it's not heavy, so it's easy to manoeuvre in car parks and what have you, and it's an easy bike to ride. So what does it sound like? Well, obviously before we started up we have the standard baffles in which have to meet the sound regulations, etc. So it's not going to be loud, but it does have a nice tone to it. If it were my bike, as I said before, I would change these pipes for something much more raspy. But let's have a listen. So, our verdict on the Royal Enfield Continental GT 650. It's a very, very good bike. You would not be disappointed if you want this style of bike, if you want a retro bike, if you want a cafe racer, if you want a bike to have a bit of fun on, to commute, to go out at the weekend and have a blast with your friends. You absolutely will love this motorbike.